This is from Mark 12, verses 18 through 27. It says, "Then the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him," being Jesus, "with a question. 'Teacher,' they said, 'Moses wrote to us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but no children, the man must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first one married and died without leaving any children. The second one married the widow, but he also died, leaving no child. It was the same for the third. It's not going great. In fact, none of the 7 left any children. Last of all, the woman died too. At the resurrection, whose wife will she be, since the 7 were married to her?' And Jesus replied, 'Are you not in error because you do not know the scriptures or the power of God? When the dead rise, they will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. Now, about the dead rising, have you not read in the book of Moses, in the account of the burning bush, how God said to him, 'I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. You are badly mistaken.' This is the word of the Lord." You can learn a lot about people from the arguments that they choose to get in. Some people just choose random arguments because they like to argue. But you learn a lot by the ones that they choose to step into conversation with people. So for example, the other day, Rainey and Teddy, my wife and son Teddy, were in the front yard with our dog, who is a little bit of an annoyance every now and then. In the front yard, I was in the back, on the back porch. I was working on a sermon, actually, and trying to be super spiritual back there. And a delivery guy came down our street to deliver some package or something like that for another house 2 doors up to the right or whatever. And our dog is just dumb, and he's also this big. He's not dangerous. He's all bark. And so the delivery guy gets out, and our dog starts barking at him and then runs that way. Again, he's like a football. You could just punt him if you wanted to. Well, the man freaked out, and Rainey was trying to calm the man down and also get our dog back and say, "He's friendly, I'm sorry, he's friendly, he's just barking," whatever. And the man just lost his mind. And I hear all this from the back, but then I heard that man started yelling, not at the dog, he started yelling at my wife. And so I put my computer down from being super holy, and I lost my freaking mind on that man. And I can get pretty deep and pretty loud, and I went around the corner and just told him I did not cuss. I was very clear about that, and very reserved. I was like, I don't want to be mean to this man, but I want him to know you will not ever yell at my wife again. You had no idea what you stepped into when you walked down and you came down the street. I was like, but you do not yell at my wife. I need you to say that you're never going to yell at her ever again. And he was like, okay. And Teddy was there, and I was really glad that Teddy got to see, not me doing that, but no one disrespects your mother. Even you, if you ever do this to your mother, just know wrath is coming. And that was it, that was it. But you learn, Teddy was like, "I don't think Dad likes it when anybody yells at you." And Randy was like, "He doesn't. Don't ever do that." So you learn a lot about a person, and you learn a lot about yourself when you enter into an argument. But I say all that, one, as maybe just to confess your sins one to another. But I say all that because you can learn a lot about people based on the arguments they get in, and Jesus enters into an argument or a confrontation with the Sadducees, where they are literally trying to just make fun of one of his beliefs. And he could have been like, "Look, I'm not getting in this with you. You're just making some random story up. This is dumb, and you're dumb for saying it. I'm just going to leave that." But he doesn't. He actually engages with them, and he talks about something. So clearly, someone's trying to make fun of him, and there's so many questions Jesus doesn't answer in the scriptures, but he chooses to answer this one even though he knows what's going on. And so there's something here based on the argument he chooses to get into that I think we can learn. And so to me, we learn 3 things. One is we learn that how we view the resurrection and life after death will affect the way that we live this life now. How we view life after this one will affect the way that we live this life. And then we have two ways that we see in the scriptures that we actually do need to view life after this one. Two things that we see as like we need to look at it and believe about it and think about it in these two ways. And so how we think about it shapes our life now, and then two ways that we need to think about it. So the first, our view of the resurrection or life after death will shape how you live this life. It will shape it. It will form you based on what you think about life after death. It was true of the Sadducees. They were known, and it says it in the text in verse 18, they were known as the Sadducees who say there is no resurrection. That was very much like, what is it? Tell me one thing about them that everybody needs to know. They were known by this. This was the marker to define who they were. And so they believed that there wasn't an afterlife. And so the way that it formed their life and who they became based on that was they became very rich and very wealthy and very powerful, and they wanted that power. They wanted a lot of prestige. They clearly looked down on people and then saw themselves as superior to other people who believed things like the resurrection, and they looked down on people. But for them, if there is no judgment to come, if there is no life after this one that's either better or worse or anything like that, then get it while you can here and now. You only live once, get it now. And so they chased after wealth. They chased after power. They wanted all of that stuff for themselves because to them it's like, this is all we got. And so I'm going to make sure I'm as comfortable as I possibly can be. I'm going to make sure I'm as powerful as I possibly can be. I'm going to make sure I'm on the right side of whatever culture we're in. If it's the Romans who rule us, perfect. We love them. Can't wait for them to give us more power. And so they just did that because for them it's like, this is all there is. And so I'm not living or changing my life to consider something in the future. This is all there is. I'm going to make sure I have everything I can possibly have. And so they didn't care about anything in the afterlife because how we think about the life after this one shapes how we live. This has been true throughout history. I was doing some research on the Vikings. The Vikings believed in Valhalla, that idea that if you died as a warrior in battle, then you would, if you courageously fought and courageously died, you would then go, the afterlife would lead you into Valhalla, where you'd actually be able to like drink wine and whatever with Odin, or I don't know, it's this whole thing in the hall there that they get to experience. But the point was like what that did, that belief that like if you die in battle courageously, you will experience an incredible afterlife. What it did for the Vikings is it made them incredible warriors. All the men were like, well, then we're going to just fight our faces off and die bravely. And it doesn't matter if we die bravely, because if we do die bravely, we enter into something better. And so it formed them and it shaped them into great warriors. Certain Islamic traditions hold to this belief of the 72 virgins in the afterlife. Not all of them, but some of them hold to that. And so these heavenly companions that they get are promised to faithful Muslim men who die fighting for their faith primarily. And so that's not all of them, but there's a tradition in there where people believe that. And so that's what leads to some of the terrorism and some of the things that happen, like I'm going to defend my faith against the infidel. And if I do that, then it's going to lead me to something better. And so I need to go and do these things. And so it shapes how they live right now. In Hinduism, Rainey teaches world religions, and we were talking about this. They believe in reincarnation based on your karma. And so if you're good, if you're kind, you're respectful, then you will be reincarnated in the next life into someone better, higher up in the social ladder and social standing and more wealth or whatever. But if you don't fulfill your daily duty to your parents and the world and nature and all these different things, if you don't live that way, then you will be reincarnated into something lesser, something worse. And then based on if you're poor, you clearly lived a terrible life before that. If you're rich, you clearly did a great thing in the life prior to this one. And so it's based on the way it shapes them is I have to be super moral. I got to make sure that I fulfill my duties. I have to do those things because the afterlife is shaping how they currently live. And Rainey talks about it in her class and some of the stories that she hears just from different people. And she's like, it's used in manipulative ways because a lot of parents use that on their kids to say, if you don't take care of me, you will be reincarnated into something lesser. And so if this kid wants to she has a story, wants to move to the States and be a doctor and help people, but the parents in India are like, you cannot go and do that because if you do that, you're rejecting your responsibility to us. And based on our faith, you will have a worse life, even though you're trying to go to the States to help people. And they bend it and they use it in order to manipulate people. And so you see this thing. That how you believe about the afterlife will shape the life that you currently live here and now, and it's true for us as well. If you never think about the afterlife, if you, as a Christian, you just never think about it, you will be formed very similarly into the Sadducees. You'll just live for this life. You only live once, get as much as you can now. You'll just really not think about it and go, everything that I have to have is here and now, and I don't think about that thing. And so I need my life to be great. I need these things to happen here and now. And so I need this vacation. I need this money. I need this relationship to work. I need my kids to do this. I need my job to do this. I need my success to do this. I need those things. And they're not just nice gifts that happen in the world. They're like, I need these things because this life is so important, and it's more important than anything else. And if we don't think about the life to come, then we get formed into the Sadducees. If we think about it, on the other hand, if you think about the afterlife too much, if you're just like always, you're out there doing that thing, it's easy to shift into becoming someone who believes that there's nothing good in this world whatsoever. I'm just ready to escape this world into another world. This world's gonna burn anyways, right? So I just need to get out of here. I'm just ready for this. And so if you think about it too much and you believe those things, you actually reject the idea that God created the world to be good. It's broken, but he actually wants to renew this world. He wants to make all things new, and he has people, sons and daughters, that get to renew the world with him. And there's work that he has prepared in advance for us to do. So if we think too much about it, then it's like, but you need to actually stay where you're at too, and he has work for you to do. If you believe that the life after this one is not going to be better, then you'll struggle with fear of what's to come. You'll not feel the way Paul did, that to live was Christ, but to die is pure gain. If you don't think it's better, you'll live with fear. If you believe that everyone goes to the same place in the afterlife, then you'll feel no urgency to fulfill what Jesus calls the Great Commission, to go and make disciples, to share the gospel. Everyone goes to the same place, so why does it matter? And if that's what you believe, then you actually deny what Jesus talks about in the scriptures. And so our current life is shaped by how we view the life to come. What you think about it will change the way that you live this particular life. And so in this text, you receive two, and Jesus gives us two ways that we should view the resurrection, the way that we should view life after death. And so, one way. The first way that we need to view life after death is that life after death is true, and it's for everyone, whether they believe it or not. Sadducees don't believe it, and Jesus is like, you were badly mistaken, trying to let them know, just so you know, even though you don't believe in this, it does not matter. It's coming either way. And so life after death is true for everyone, whether they believe in it or not. Sadducees didn't believe in any of this stuff, and the reason they didn't believe it was there was a number of reasons, but they were the conservative religious people of the day. They only held to the first 5 books of the Bible, the first 5 books of Moses, the Torah. And so they believed that resurrection wasn't spoken of through the words of Moses and the writings of Moses, and so we don't believe in it because of that. And so in order to talk to them, Jesus actually uses the first 5 books of Moses. He uses the second book, Exodus, to prove to them, you think that resurrection isn't real based on whatever you're claiming and holding up as true Bible. He's like, I'm going to show you that it actually is real. And so in verse 26 and 27, this is what he says. He says, now about the dead rising, have you not read in the book of Moses, the thing that you hold up and the only things that you believe? In the account of the burning bush, how God said to him, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And then he says, he is not the God of the dead, but the living. You are badly mistaken. And there's so many different things that Jesus is doing in this. He's showing that he's not saying, I was the God of these people. I'm still am. But he's also saying that, like, I'm not the God of this covenant, and once they die, I'm no longer the God of the covenant. But the point is what he's saying, the most significant point is he's drawing from what they claim to believe. We believe the first 5 books of Moses, and that's why we don't believe in the resurrection. He's like, but God himself says, not I was the God of these people until they died, but I am still the God of these people. I am still God over these people because I am not a God over the dead, but of the living. And to him, even though they're dead in this life, and the life that they're currently living, they're still alive to him. And so in this, Jesus is seeking to prove to them from their own sources that there is, in fact, a life after death, whether you believe it or not. And then in other spaces in the scriptures, Jesus says that, like, the resurrection isn't just for those who believe, it's actually for everyone. Everyone will be resurrected. Everyone's going to experience that thing. Everyone's going to experience life after death. In John 5, Jesus says this. He says, very truly, I tell you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life and will not be judged, but crosses over from death to life. But very, very truly, I tell you, a time is coming when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live and come out. Those who have done good, and what is good? Believed in the Son, based on verse 24. They will rise to live. And those who have done what is evil or rejected the Son, they will also rise, but they will rise to condemnation. And so Jesus says here, he proves to them that it's real, but he says in John, he's like, and it's not just for those who just claim to believe and everybody else sleeps this eternal sleep or something like that. Some get to rise to life and the other ones, there's just nothing for them. It's like, no. They both rise. One rises to life and one rises to judgment or condemnation. And so if our belief and if your belief if you believe the scriptures, if you're here today, you're like, I don't actually know if I believe the scriptures, then this might not apply to you as much, although I would love to talk to you about that. But if you claim to believe in the scriptures and you would say that like, okay, because Jesus said this, I align because I fall under his authority, I'm going to believe what he tells me to believe. If you believe that life after death is true and real, and it's not just for those who believe it, but it's actually for everyone, and some will rise to life and some will rise to condemnation or to judgment, that should shape you. That should form you. That should make, one, it should lead us to want to actually be with Jesus, to believe in Jesus, but two, one of the things it should shape us into is like we should have this urgency and this desire to go, everyone's gonna rise to something. And if there are people in my life that don't know this and they don't believe in Jesus, it should lead us with this urgency to go and talk to them, to share with people about who Jesus is, and appeal to them to try and lead them to follow Jesus and believe in Jesus. If we actually believe that that there's this space where like there's an afterlife where people rise to life and some rise to judgment and condemnation, then it should give us an urgency to go and talk to people who don't know him. And so if you have people in your life that don't know Jesus, but you believe that there is a resurrection for the just and the unjust, it should lead you to go like, I need some urgency to go talk to those people, praying for conversations that you can have with them, inroads and dynamics where you can actually share your faith and those kinds of things. Not like forcing them to do it, but it should lead us to have this urgency to go, no one gets out of this. Everyone is going to have to experience these things, and I want you to experience the life that you get resurrected into, not the judgment. And so it should lead us to have an urgency and a desire to share Jesus with people. But then secondly, and just as important, if you believe that there is a judgment resurrection and there is a life resurrection, it should lead you to consider if your life as a Christian is making Jesus wonderful enough to choose. Because it's one thing to say, hey, you need to believe in Jesus. It's another thing for people to see your life and go like, hey man, you're kind of the worst person I've ever met, and you're telling me that I should believe in Jesus, but I want to be nothing like you, and you claim to believe in Jesus. Why would I ever want him if you're someone who represents him? And I'm not saying that we should be perfect in that, but it should lead us to go, are there people in our lives are we making Jesus appealing to other people? Or is it a space where it's like, honestly, they reject him because of me and the way that I live? And so a good question to ask is the way that you follow Jesus, is it compelling people to want to follow Jesus for themselves? Do they see your life and go like, man, there's just something about your peace, your joy, your graciousness, your kindness, your compassion, your willingness to reconcile with people, your willingness to listen and not just spew anger into people. Like there's something about you that's completely different. What is that? It's appealing. What is that? It's Jesus living in me. That's who that is. And it's like, that's really appealing. And it should be appealing. Or is it the other way? Is your obedience and your sacrifice to him, is it leading you to just be miserable? And you're like, I'm incredibly obedient, I'm very sacrificial, but you're miserable. You're like, I hate this. It's the worst. And the way that you're following Jesus is making you angrier and more condemning and more judgmental and more superior to other people. And it's like, one, if you're following Jesus that way and those things are happening, you're following Jesus incorrectly. That's wrong. But if the way that you're seeking to follow after Jesus is making you just like, yes, you're doing all this stuff and you're obeying the scriptures and doing all these things, but honestly, you're miserable. Why would anybody want that life? If you're like, yeah, everybody needs to follow Jesus, it's like, really, why? It's like, well, I don't know, it's really terrible, but You just should, and you're supposed to. And it's like, show me, is it good in your life? Like, no, not really, but you should really do that. And it's like, there's a disconnect between what you're saying is very important and then actually the way that following Jesus is actually shaping your life. And so if you're following Jesus and people would look at your life, if your kids would go like, are you glad that your parents are Christian? Are you glad that, do you want to follow Jesus based on the way your parents follow Jesus? Does your parents' marriage make you want to have a Christian marriage? Or does your parents' marriage lead you to believe that Jesus has no realm in marriage and no effect in any kind of marriage? And so if you were to ask your kids, like, is the way that we're following Jesus, is that appealing to them to go, I also want to follow this Jesus that is affecting my family and my parents in this way? Or are they going, honestly, if I'm anything like my parents, if I carry their stress, their burdens, their anger, their meanness, if I carry those things and they're claiming to be a Christian, I want nothing to do with your Christ. And so it's important because I don't want people at the end of my life going, I would have chosen Jesus, but honestly, that guy sucked. Like, I don't want that. And I think there's something for us to look at and to go, if people would look at our lives and say, why would I ever want to know the Jesus that you know? Then it should lead us to go like, man, I need to shift this and change this. Because even the apostle, because some people would be like, well, but I'm just dealing with hardships. Like I'm taking on more. I'm being more obedient, more sacrificial. That's why it's harder. That's why I'm miserable. That's why. And it's like the apostle Paul is in a prison cell a lot and gets his head chopped off for the gospel. So not a great day in the time. And yet he's singing hymns to God and he's praying to God and people watched his life and he still had a hope and a joy and a peace and this fullness of life because prison couldn't steal it from him. Being bound couldn't steal it from him. His suffering and his hardships and all those things didn't make him go like, life is the worst and you're the worst too. Like, it didn't make him do that. It led him to actually go, to live, I long to go and be with Jesus, but to live is Christ. To live here is Christ. And to die is gain, but there's something here. And people were led to faith even though he was suffering, even though he was dealing with hardships, even though he was sacrificing more than anybody in a prison cell writing letters to churches. His faith was still compelling because there was something in him, even in the midst of the crushing that he was dealing with. Something about him was like, but your faith is still very, very compelling to other people. And so for you, there is a judgment resurrection. And there was a life resurrection. And people are going to be making decisions about that based on the things that you say and how you followed that man. And so if the way that you're following Jesus is making your life miserable and then you're spewing that onto other people, why would they ever want Jesus? Because it's not affecting your life for fullness and abundance. Why would I want something like that? And so we need to consider that. That's the first one. The fact that everyone will experience either a resurrection to life or a resurrection to judgment should lead us to consider if our lives are actually witnessing to the goodness of Jesus. And it should lead us to actually speak about him as well. And then the second view. The second thing we need to view about the resurrection and life after death is that life after death, this resurrection life, it will be better than we can possibly imagine. It does not make sense to us here and now, but it will be better than anything we can possibly imagine. The Sadducees struggled with the idea of an afterlife because it didn't make sense to the way the world currently worked. The world works this way. It's confusing. There's no way there can be a resurrection because if the world works this way, then this would happen, and this is incompatible. These things are incompatible, and that's what they say here. They're talking about this problem that Moses gave to the people of like, if this one marries this one, if this one dies, they're supposed to procreate with the other one and do this whole thing. So that's what they're talking about. And so they ask, this woman has married 7 men at the resurrection in verse 23. At the resurrection, whose wife will she be? Since 7 were married to her. And Jesus' response to their concern is basically, that's not a problem that you'll face. That's not an issue. And so he says this in verse 25, when the dead rise, they will neither marry nor be given into marriage. They'll be like the angels in heaven. And that's his answer. Now, many people struggle with what he says, but it's because of marriage. And they're like, but my spouse. But it's important to realize he's commenting less on the practice of marriage and more just about like the thing that they're actually asking him. He's commenting less on the practice of marriage and how that's going to be in the afterlife. And he's basically saying to them and pointing to something and going, you think there will be a problem in the life to come. There will not be problems in the life to come. This thing that you're holding up is like, see, this is a huge issue that one day we're going to have to face in the new kingdom. It's like, yeah, you're not going to face that problem. That's not going to be an issue. So Mark Strauss in his commentary says this. This passage is disturbing to Christians who would hope and expect the intimacy of their marital relationship to continue into eternity. But Jesus does not claim that the intimacy of earthly relationships will be discontinued in eternity. He only says that there will be no need for the institution of marriage. Since there will be no more death, the need for marriage and the propagation of the race will not exist. And so we may reasonably posit that all relationships, including those most dear to us today, will exist on an even higher plane in eternity. Things aren't going to get worse. They're going to get better. And so his idea is like, these things that we hold as valuable and these things that we think are like, man, this is a God-instituted wonderful thing, and now it's just going to go away. And it's like, no, your relationships will exist on an even higher plane because the world will be renewed and so will all things. D.A. Carson says this as well. He says, the greatness of the changes at the resurrection will doubtless make the wife of even 7 brothers capable of loving them all and the object of love of all of them, in the same way that a good mother today loves all her children and also is loved by them. And so Jesus' point isn't really about marriage itself. His point is, you think that you're going to face problems in the life to come. You won't. Don't worry about that. It's better than you think. It will be better than you can currently imagine. And so if you have these ideas of like, I have this problem of like what's coming and what's coming up ahead, and it makes me nervous or it makes me scared or it makes me not want to go. It's like those things, this is what Jesus said, those things, put those out of your mind. You will not have those problems. Those things will not be things that you think about. You will not experience lack. You will not have that loss. It will not be something that affects you in the life to come. Those problems that you have will not be things that actually scare you, make you nervous, and that you actually experience in the life to come. And so, for instance, the conversations that I've had with people just over the years, students, family, adults, people struggle with like the length of time of eternity. And they're like, and maybe you're in the room and you're like, yes, that is a struggle for me, just to be like, you're gonna be there for eternity, and you're like, that's not good news. Like, that's very terrifying. I don't wanna live somewhere forever. There's an actual phobia. It's called like a paraphobia or something, where your fear is infinity and endless time. And so length of time has led people to be like, I'm nervous about that experience in heaven of being there forever and that kind of thing. And I heard somebody, or maybe it was a commentator, he said, you should think about the best day of your life. And then you're experiencing the best day of your life. And if somebody asked you like, hey, you ready to die right now? Like, this is the best day of your life. You ready to, you want to end this right here? Normally, a sane person would be like, no, I'd like for this to keep going. He's like, perfect. So if that's true consistently, it's like, it's going to be something like that, but even that pales in comparison to what it actually is. Length of time will not be an actual issue that you face in eternity. Some people think about boredom. That's a struggle for them. Not only are we going to be there forever, and like, what am I going to do? And then they have these visions of, angels sitting on clouds with harps. And maybe that's not you, but like that's what some people think of. At least that's in the media. It's like, what are they doing when they go to heaven? Apparently you get wings and a harp. I don't know. Learn to play the harp now. Save you some time then. But that's not something. Then the other would be relationships. I know a lady that loved her husband. Just loved him. And he passed away early on into their relationship. And now, years later, and she's like in her 30s, wants to get married again, but she's like, but if I marry him, and then it's very similar to this text, and then I get to heaven one day, it's gonna be awkward with the other guy. And I don't really want to experience awkwardness in heaven. And so it's like this thing, I'm like, again, that's not going to, like, whatever you're dealing with in this world that you think is going to pose a problem in the world to come, Jesus is basically saying, in a big way, but it's basically saying, that will not be a problem. If you're nervous about something, set your nerves aside. If it's scaring you of what's to come, don't be nervous about the thing. It's better than you can possibly imagine. And so that's what he's saying. you will not experience those concerns. He says you will be like the angels in heaven, which again has led people to be like, am I going to get wings? Or if you read about the angels in the Gospels or in the Old Testament, they got eyes everywhere on their body, and it's kind of weird. That's not what they're saying. It's not like you will be like them characteristically, like you're not going to get wings when you're there and things like that. That's not what Jesus is saying. He's referencing that you will be completely fulfilled, captivated, satisfied with God as the source of every single thing in your life that you need. They are completely fulfilled, and he's talking about angels in heaven, not the ones that rejected God's leadership. But you will be completely fulfilled. You'll be like them that's going like, I don't have need. Everything that I need is here. And if you read in the scriptures, like in Revelation, the angels are just constantly shouting and saying, holy, 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 holy. They're just standing in God's presence saying, holy, holy, holy. And some people are like, see, that's exactly why I'm scared to go to heaven. I don't want to sing. I don't even want to sing at church. Like, I hate this. I'm going to be worshiping for eternity. I'm just saying the same words over and over and over again. But you have to realize those angels are not forced to do that. They're not like you sit there for eternity and just shout, holy, holy, holy. They're not forced to do that. They've just found that like the thing that fulfills me the most is to stand in this God's presence. The thing that I find and tap the most meaning is found here, saying these words over and over and over again. And God's like, you can go do something else. And like, why would I ever want to go do anything else? I'm finally in a space where I'm tapping real meaning and real joy and real peace and everything I've been longing for. I'm finally experiencing those things. And that's what Jesus is referencing. Right now, in this world, the way that you live, we all search for meaning, joy, peace, love, all those different things, and we search for it and we get pockets of it, but we're never actually fulfilled by the thing. And one day, you will stand in a space, and Jesus says you will be like the angels, and all of that stuff, you will go to the source of joy. You will go to the source of love. You will go to the source of peace, and you will stand in that space and want nothing else, and want for nothing else, because finally, you are fulfilled in every possible capacity that you have. That will be happening for you. And so you will never be thinking about the lack or the loss or these questions that people, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask God, da-da-da-da. No, you're not. You're going to be just enthralled and captivated in his presence. And so that's what he's referencing and just saying, it will be far better than you can imagine or think. And so Jesus is saying one day we will finally be able to experience this fullness that we're searching for in this life and can't find. That one day we'll actually be able to find those things. And that's what he's saying. David Guzik says this. He says, if it seems that life in the resurrection that Jesus speaks of here does not include some of the pleasures of life that we know on earth, it is only because the enjoyments and satisfactions of heaven far surpass what we know on earth. We can't be completely certain what life and glory beyond will be like, but we can know with certainty that no one will be disappointed with the arrangements. No one's going to be disappointed with the arrangements. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 2, he says, eye has not seen, nor ear has heard, neither has it ever entered into the heart of man, the things that God has prepared for them that love him. No one can even possibly imagine what's coming for us, what is available to us. And so even our best imagination of what it will be like pales in comparison to what it will actually be. And that's what the scriptures testify to. It's better than you can possibly imagine. I love how C.S. Lewis talks about it. He says that this life, this one that we're currently living, this life is only the cover of the book and the title page. Now, in the life to come, now begins chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, and in which every chapter is better than the one before. Like that's what, I love that picture of it, like what's available, what's coming. Your life and how you live will be shaped by what you believe about the resurrection, what you believe about the afterlife. And so for us, we need to have in our view and have in our mind, what's it like? It's far better than anything you could possibly imagine. It's far better than anything you'll experience here. And if we can hold that view and actually believe that thing, what it would make us fearless in this life. It'd make us like, I don't fear death. I see it as this new, beautiful opportunity that Jesus has made available to me. Death no longer steals from me. Death now actually leads me into a greater life. And so you can live a life without fear. And you can embrace the life to come with joy, thinking about it that way. It's supposed to relieve our fears, not to make us afraid. Like, how long is it going to be? Like, don't be afraid of that. It's supposed to relieve you of your fears. And I think if we believe that, we'd actually live without fear. And I think you see this in the early Christians. They understood this really well. They grasped this. They really believed it, that what's coming in the life to come is far better, and it relieved them of their fears. In this quote, it's a book called Rooted by Raymond Kanata and Josh Rotano. It says this. It says, 2 great plagues ravaged the Roman Empire. One was in AD 165, the other in 251. They were awful, and they devastated cities throughout the region. At one point, an estimated 35,000 people per week were dying in Rome. No one was exactly sure how the plague was spread, but it was known that one could get it by contact. Because of this, those who had the opportunity or the means to flee the city fled the city of Rome. The rich got out of town, doctors fled in huge numbers, and families even abandoned their own relatives. Everyone fled, save for one group, the Christians. The Christians stayed in large numbers, and they cared for those who came down with the disease. They risked their lives, and many were infected with the disease, and they died. Why did the Christians stay while most of the pagan people left? Well, it had to do with their worldview. The pagans had no assurance of the afterlife. Their religion was uncertain about whether or not there was life after death. Most believed that this world was all there was. Christians, on the other hand, knew this fallen world was the prelude to something far more glorious. They believed in the resurrection of the dead. Thus, the Christians stayed and the pagans fled, because if this life is all there is, you'd better not get the plague and die too soon. But if you believed, like the Christians did, that you would one day be raised up, then you could face the plague in order to care for others. This point of doctrine, this belief, it freed them. Because of the resurrection, death had lost its sting, and they didn't have to be afraid. And I love that idea. Like believing, or just the truth of that, believing that freed them, and it made them free to be like, I can actually follow Jesus here and now because I'm not afraid of what's to come. And these people, they're not pursuing death. They didn't have a death wish or anything like that. That's not what they were doing. But they also realized, like, this life is not as good as it gets. I will not tap real meaning in this life. I will not find everything I'm looking for in this life. And so why would I be afraid of the life to come if that's where I'll finally actually get the things that I've been longing for? And this angst that I've always felt in my heart will finally one day be relieved in this other space. Why would I be afraid of that? And they just lived with this idea that there was something better than they could possibly imagine, and that was what was next. And so they could face death and all things more fearlessly. And to me, if we actually believed that, I think it would save us from our fears of death as well. But I think it would also make us more resilient when we don't get what we want here in this life. It would make us more sacrificial and serving of others, because it's like, honestly, that's what I want to do that. I'm called to do that. Jesus calls me to do that. And if I don't get every single thing that I want here, one day I'm going to have so much beyond anything I could possibly imagine. And so it's fine. And so I'm able to persevere. I'm able to be resilient. I'm able to deal with hardships in this life because this is not all there is. There's something greater up ahead. And so that's true for us. I believe we need to believe those things about it. And I think that's what Jesus is getting at. You will be like the angels in heaven. You're not going to have those needs, those lacks, those longings anymore. Those things will be fulfilled. So how we view the life to come shapes how you live this life. And we need to believe that there is a resurrection to life, and we need to believe that there's a resurrection to judgment. And that should lead us not to be condemning our culture, but it should lead us with an urgency to go, let me tell you about Jesus. And it should lead us to question, like, if there are people in my life looking at my life and going, you're the reason why I don't want anything to do with that man you call God, repent, change that. The early Christians were compelling. We need to be compelling as well. We need to have a compelling witness. And we need to believe that the life after this one is better than anything we can possibly imagine. And if we believe that, it would make us face the life to come with a fearlessness that would also be appealing and also be attractive. That would speak something to the world around us. It's like, why don't you share the same fears that we have? It's like, because I know something, this isn't as good as it gets. And so why would I ever try and place all of my hope, all of my dreams, and anything I could get here and now when I know that something better is up ahead? Come with me. Let's do that thing together. Paul says that all of this is made available to us because of what Jesus has done. That he has taken death, this thing that so many people are afraid of that steals and kills and destroys. He has taken death and he has silenced it. And so now it is not something that steals from us, but death is now the doorway into, it used to be a doorway into no life, and now it is a doorway into greater life. That's what Jesus has accomplished for us in death. He has pivoted it on its head. It's like, you serve me now, not the other way around. I have the keys. And so what Paul says is like, this happened when Jesus died on the cross, and then it's evidenced by his resurrection from the dead. Paul says this in 1 Corinthians 15. He says, if Christ has not been raised, then our faith is useless. But Christ has indeed been raised from the dead. He is the first fruits of all who have fallen asleep. For since death came through one man, Adam, the resurrection of the dead comes through another man. For as in Adam all die, so in Christ all will be made alive, but each in their turn. Christ is the first fruits, and then, when he comes, it will be those who belong to him. And so I want the reality of this truth. If it's not something that you think about often, I do think it's something that should shape our lives. It should be something that we think about. If you are facing death or walking with people that are dealing with that, there should be a hopefulness that you're able to grasp and hold on to, and this beautiful, adventurous idea of something greater is up ahead, not something worse. And so it should shape our lives, and we should be able to live in the reality of like, there's something greater up ahead. There's something greater for us. And so I want us to be shaped by that. Let me pray.